Good evening, students. I am Rohit, and today we will start with state legislature. But before starting the state legislature, we will first complete the remaining portion of the Indian state legislature. But before starting the state legislature, we will first complete the remaining portion of the Indian state legislature. But before starting with the state legislature, we will first complete the remaining portion of the Indian state legislature. But before starting with the state legislature, we will first complete the remaining portion of the Indian state legislature. But before starting with the state legislature, we will first हेलो अब ठीक है ओके शुरू से okay I am again going to start from the beginning. In the last class we have completed the three important bills: ordinary bill, money bill and financial bill. Now the last bill is the constitutional amendment bill. Okay अब ठीक है okay so right now we have to discuss constitutional amendment bill. But remember one thing, constitutional amendment bill is discussed under a separate chapter, and that is the amendment of the constitution. Constitutional amendment bill is not a part of the topic parliament. We have to discuss it separately. Okay, so today we have to start with, see listen grandmaster, right now we have not launched any online course for this. Right now we are just conducting classes on YouTube, and that too free for all the students. Okay, so it will take a little bit time, okay, for the online courses, but right now we are teaching in free, so we are teaching for free. You just understand whatever we are saying. Okay, so okay, so let's come back to the topic. So today we will start with the amendment of the constitution for understanding constitutional amendment bill. So this particular topic is under part 20th of the constitution, article 368. Now second thing, from where we have borrowed the procedure to amend the constitution. The procedure to amend the constitution has been borrowed from South Africa. Okay, now this particular point is important, that from where we have borrowed the procedure to amend the constitution. And I think I have discussed this in previous classes, that the Article 368 is the procedure to amend the constitution. We have discussed it several times, that what is Article 368, but we have not discussed the procedure to amend the constitution. We have just discussed that by special majority we can amend this. Okay, under Article 368 a special majority is required, but we have so far not discussed that what is the exact procedure to amend the constitution. So right now we are discussing that procedure in detail. Now another thing, Indian constitution is rigid and flexible both. I have explained this point while explaining the features of the Indian constitution, that Indian constitution is rigid and flexible. And remember, the rigid feature of Indian constitution is a part of the federal feature, and the flexible feature is a part of unitary feature of the constitution. So rigid and flexible is the feature of the constitution, but the rigid feature is the federal feature of the constitution, whereas flexible part is the unitary feature of the constitution. Now moving ahead, now what is the exact procedure to amend the constitution? So if we have to amend the constitution, then the first thing that you have to remember is that the only parliament has the authority to amend the constitution. No state legislature has the authority to amend the constitution. So the first point that we should write is that the constitution can be amended only by the parliament. So the first point is only parliament can amend the constitution. Only parliament can amend the constitution. It means states do not have the right to amend the constitution. Why? Simple. There is only one constitution and there are 28 states. So if tomorrow we allow the states to amend the constitution, then suppose the state of Bihar amended the constitution, then the state of Madhya Pradesh also amended, then there will be no uniformity. States will be able to amend the constitution according to their will. So that is why the amendment of the constitution can be done only by a single authority, and that is the Parliament of India and not the state legislature. So remember, only the parliament can amend the constitution, and for amending the constitution you require a constitutional amendment bill. So can I say that a constitutional amendment bill can be introduced only in the parliament and not in the state legislature, because the purpose of constitutional amendment bill is to amend the constitution, and the constitution can be amended only by the parliament. So it means this particular bill can be introduced only in the parliament and not in the state legislature. So the second point is that since only parliament can amend the constitution, that is why a constitutional amendment bill, a constitutional amendment bill can be introduced only in the parliament. Okay. Now third point. Now we all know that this bill can be introduced only in the parliament, but in parliament there are two houses. The first is Lok Sabha and the second is Rajya Sabha. So this bill will be introduced in which house? Lok Sabha or Rajya Sabha? This bill can be introduced in either house of the parliament, because when it comes to the amendment of the constitution, both the houses of parliament have equal power. Equal power means the bill can be introduced in either house of the parliament. So I can start this bill either from the Lok Sabha or from the Rajya Sabha. So the next point is that from where we can start the bill. This bill can be started from either house. So the next point is that this bill can be introduced. This bill can be introduced in either house of the parliament. In either house of the parliament. It means it can be started either from Lok Sabha or from the Rajya Sabha. Okay. Now one more thing. We all know that in case of money bill, the recommendation of president is required during its introduction. So for introducing a money bill, we require the recommendation of the president. So the same recommendation of president, do you think is required in the case of amendment bill? No. The recommendation of president is not required for the introduction of a constitutional amendment bill. So the next point is that recommendation of president is not required. Recommendation of the president is not required for its introduction. Is not required for its introduction. Okay, and when I say the recommendation of president is not required for its introduction. It basically means that this bill can be introduced either by a minister or by a private member. Because in the last class, I have explained the meaning of the recommendation of the president. For introducing a money bill, you require the recommendation of president, which basically means that this bill can be introduced only by a minister and not by a private member. So here the recommendation of president is not required. It means this bill can be introduced either by a minister or by a private member. So the next point is basically the meaning of the fourth statement, and that is it can be introduced either by a minister or by a private member Okay, so finally, now we all know that this bill can be introduced in either house of the parliament, and the recommendation of president is not required. It means it can be introduced either by a minister or by a private member. Okay, what will happen when this bill will be introduced in either of the house? So now suppose this bill is introduced in the Lok Sabha. Then what will happen in the Lok Sabha? Simple. This bill must be passed by a special majority of Lok Sabha, and if this bill is introduced in the Rajya Sabha, then the bill should be passed by special majority of Rajya Sabha. So in either of the house, the special majority is required for passing the bill. Okay, so the important point is that which majority is required under Article 368? It is the special majority. So the next point is this bill must be passed. This bill must be passed by a special majority. Okay, and when I say special majority, it basically means, see, according to Indian Constitution, special majority is of three types. First is the special majority mentioned under Article 61. The second special majority is under Article 249, and the third special majority is under Article 368. So here we are discussing the special majority which is mentioned under Article 368, and the definition of a special majority according to Article 368 is majority of the total membership of the house and majority of not less than 2/3 of the members present and voting in the house. So this is the special majority under Article 368. Okay. Now remember, suppose Lok Sabha passed the bill by special majority and Rajya Sabha didn't pass the bill by special majority. So in case if either of the house does not pass the bill by special majority, then what will happen? In this case, there will be no provision of joint sitting, because according to Constitution, this bill must be passed from both the House of Parliament separately, and that too by simple majority. So under Article 368, it is specifically mentioned that the bill should be passed separately from both the Houses of Parliament. Here the word separately means that there will be no joint sitting in case of any dispute or conflict between the two Houses of Parliament. We have seen in case of ordinary bill that in case of an ordinary bill, if there is a dispute between the two houses, then there is a compromise, and that compromise is known as joint sitting. But in case of the constitutional amendment bill, the constitution wants that this bill should be passed separately from both the houses, and here the word separately means that the joint sitting is not possible. Okay, so the next point that we have to write is this bill must be passed separately. This bill must be passed separately from both the houses. Okay, this bill must be passed separately from both the houses, and we can simply write that the word separately means joint sitting is not possible on this bill. Joint sitting is not possible on this bill. Okay, so now I can finally say that joint sitting is possible on which type of bill? The first is the ordinary bill on which joint sitting is possible, and the second is the financial bill, both category 1 and category 2, on which joint sitting is possible. So the joint sitting is not possible on a money bill and a constitutional amendment bill. Why there is no joint sitting on a money bill? Because Lok Sabha has the upper hand. If the bill is passed from the Lok Sabha, then consider the bill is passed from the Lok Sabha. Rajya Sabha has limited powers. And in case of constitutional amendment bill, though both the houses have equal power, but the fact is the constitution wants that this bill should be passed from both the houses separately. So that is why again joint sitting is not possible in this case. Now what will happen if the bill is passed to the president? If the Lok Sabha Rajya Sabha has passed the bill to the president, then the president, we all know that president has three options. Either the president will give his assent to the bill, or withhold his assent to the bill, or return the bill for reconsideration. We all know that these are the three options available with the President of India. Now, when it comes to the constitutional amendment bill, the president has only one option, and that one option is the president must give his assent to the bill. This is the only bill out of all those four bills where the president is required to give his assent to the bill. If you think that on money bill the president must give his assent to the bill, no. As per the constitution, the president can withhold his assent to the bill, because according to constitution the president has two powers on a money bill. Either he can give his assent or he can withhold his assent, but he cannot return a money bill, but he can say no to a money bill. So according to constitution, the president can reject a money bill. That is theoretically possible. Practically it is not possible, but theoretically it is possible. But when it comes to the constitutional amendment bill, theoretically also it is not possible for the president to reject the bill or return the bill, because it is specifically mentioned in the constitution that the president must give his assent to a constitutional amendment bill. And this particular point was mentioned by 24th Amendment Act of 1971. Before 24th Amendment Act of 1971, there was no provision in the constitution which warrants the president to give his assent to the bill. No. So this particular provision that the president must give his assent to the bill was inserted by the 24th Amendment Act. So remember, the president has only one option, and that is this is no option, and again it is also not an option. So the only option available with the president is that he has to give his assent to the bill. So here we can write the president must give his assent to the president must give his assent to a constitutional amendment bill. To a constitutional amendment bill. And now this particular point that you have seen right now, that the president is supposed to give his assent to the bill, this point was inserted by 24th Constitutional Amendment Act of 1971. Okay, so this particular point is important. Now suppose the question comes in the examination that by which amendment the president was made bound to give his assent to the constitutional amendment bill. So it was 24th Amendment Act of 1971 passed during the government of Indira Gandhi. Okay, so this is the constitutional amendment bill, and remember there are multiple ways to amend the Indian Constitution. See, we are done with the procedure to amend the Indian Constitution. Now we will understand that in how many ways we can amend the Constitution. So total 3 ways are there in which we can amend the Indian Constitution. Now let us understand the 3 ways to amend the Indian Constitution. So the Indian Constitution can be amended. Okay. So the Indian Constitution can be amended in 3 ways. The first way is by simple majority. We can amend, in fact, majority provisions of the Constitution can be amended by simple majority. That is passing a simple law of the Parliament. Second is special majority. The second way to amend the Indian Constitution is special majority. And the third way to amend the Constitution is the special majority of the Parliament. Special majority of the Parliament and ratification of half of the state legislatures. See, if you are not able to understand what I have written, then remember, the fact is, there are few provisions. See, initially I have discussed that only Parliament can amend the Constitution. But the fact is, there are few provisions in the Constitution which cannot be amended just by parliament. There are few provisions which require not only the consent of the parliament but also the consent of states. And now there are 28 states. Consent of how many states are required? The answer is the consent of half of the state legislature is required. It means we have 28 states. So even if 14 states give their consent to a particular proposal of the parliament, then that amendment can take place. Okay. So there are few provisions of the constitution which basically affect the federal structure of our country. So whenever the federal structure of the country is affected by an amendment, then it is necessary that the parliament obtains the consent of half of the state legislature. And I'm again and again saying that only the consent of half of the state legislature is required. I'm not saying more than half of the state legislature. So it means that out of 28, even if 14 states give their consent, then that amendment will take place and it will be applicable for the entire country, including those 28 states. So even if those 14 states have not given their consent, but still that particular amendment will also be applicable on those 14 states, those who have not given their consent, because once the requirement of 14 states is over, now we do not care about the remaining 14 states, and now the amendment can happen in the constitution, and with this amendment all the states of the country will be affected. Okay, so the only limitation for the parliament is that it requires the consent of half of the state legislature, and that is a tough task. So when I said that whenever the parliament wants to amend the federal features of the constitution, we require the consent of half of the state. So what are these federal features which affects even the state as well? So remember, those features which basically affect the states are, now for example, I'm trying to give you the examples. The first is, let us take the election of the president. So now the election of the president is mentioned under Article 54 of the Constitution. If Parliament wants to amend the election of the president under Article 54, then you all know that in the election of president, states also participate. So if the Parliament wants to change the election of the president, then obviously states are going to be affected, because states also participate in the election of president. So that is why whenever the Parliament tries to amend the election of the president, we require the consent of half of the state, because states will also be affected because they also participate in the election of the president. And what about the 7th schedule? Yes, if the Parliament wants to amend the 7th schedule, then for amending the 7th schedule, again you require the consent of half of the state legislature. Why? Because if any change is made in the 7th schedule, then obviously states are going to be affected. For example, if we shift few state subject from state list to union list, then obviously states are going to be affected. Okay, so if parliament tries to amend the 7th schedule, then the state legislature's consent is also required. Okay, so election of the president, 7th schedule, and including the Parliament has the power to amend Article 368 itself. I mean, the Parliament can exercise the power under Article 368 to amend Article 368. So it is possible to amend the procedure of the constitution. It is possible to amend the procedure of amendment of the constitution under Article 368. But if Parliament really wants to amend Article 368 by using Article 368, then again it requires the ratification of half of the state legislatures. So these are few examples where we are seeing that the consent of half of the state legislature is also required. So I hope you understood that why the ratification of half of the state legislature is necessary. Whenever an amendment affects the federal structure of the constitution, then obviously we require the consent of half of the states. Okay, so these are few examples where the ratification of half of the state legislature is required. So with this, the constitutional amendment bill is over, and now we will start one more topic in the chapter Parliament, and that is the special powers of Rajya Sabha. Let us see what is the special power of Rajya Sabha. So there are two special powers of Rajya Sabha. Special powers of Rajya Sabha, and see, recently, the new edition of M. Lakshmikant has mentioned that there are total 4 powers. There are total 4 special powers of Rajya Sabha. So the latest edition of M. Lakshmikant says that there are 4 special powers of Rajya Sabha. But if you will check the older versions of M. Lakshmikant, there you will find that M. Lakshmikant has mentioned that there are only 2 special powers of the Rajya Sabha. Now, why there is a confusion? I mean, in the older version, it is mentioned 2, and now in the latest version, you will find 4 special power. So how come all of a sudden 2 special powers appeared in the constitution? So the fact is that there is no article in the constitution which says that there will be some special powers with the Rajya Sabha. No. It is up to the author and those who are expert in the constitution that they will analyze the constitution and they will try to analyze that whether the Rajya Sabha has been given some special power or not. So by reading the articles of the constitution, you try to figure out whether the Rajya Sabha has special powers or not. So in the constitution, it is not mentioned whether Rajya Sabha has a special power or not. So it is up to the author. When he will read the constitution, he will try to figure out, okay, this particular thing is like some special power of Rajya Sabha. So earlier, people used to say that there are only 2 powers of Rajya Sabha which are special, and now they are saying there are total 4 special powers of Rajya Sabha. So we are concerned about those 2 special powers of Rajya Sabha. Okay, and because the remaining 2 special powers of Rajya Sabha that we have already discussed. Okay, so for example, no. Out of those 2 special powers, we have okay. So that one special power which I have not discussed is that we all know that the emergency must be passed by both the houses of parliament within a specified duration. So for example, in case of national emergency, the national emergency must be passed from both the houses of parliament within 2 months. Okay, sorry, within 1 month. Before 1978 it was 2 months, but now it is 1 month. So national emergency must be passed by both the houses of parliament within 1 month. Now suppose in that 1 month Lok Sabha is not in session or Lok Sabha has been dissolved. So what will happen? In this case, Rajya Sabha alone can pass the national emergency by special majority, and once Lok Sabha comes to the session, then within 1 month even the Lok Sabha can also approve the national emergency. So in the absence of Lok Sabha, Rajya Sabha has the power to approve national emergency or president's rule or financial emergency. So this can be considered as the special power of Rajya Sabha. Though not mentioned in the constitution, but those who are expert, they try to understand that yes, this is the special position available. Okay, so this can be called as a special power of Rajya Sabha. We all know that the procedure to remove the president can be started only from the Rajya Sabha. Then we can say this is also the special power of Rajya Sabha. Okay, though under Article 67 of the Constitution, it is not mentioned that this will be the special power of the Rajya Sabha. But people think that yes, this is the special privilege of Rajya Sabha, that the procedure to remove the vice president can be started only from the Rajya Sabha and not from the Lok Sabha. So, but we will be discussing those 2 important special powers of Rajya Sabha. The first special power of Rajya Sabha is under Article 249 and the second special power of Rajya Sabha is under Article 312. So first we will start what is Article 249. Okay, so Article 249 says that if Rajya Sabha passes a resolution on a subject mentioned in the state list by majority of the by 2/3 majority of the members present and voting in the house, that to national interest, then the parliament becomes empowered to make a law on that subject. So it means the Rajya Sabha has the authority to allow the parliament to make a law on a subject mentioned in the state list. Now this can happen only when the Rajya Sabha passes a resolution on a state subject in the national interest by 2/3 majority of the members present and voting in the house. And if this happens, then the parliament becomes authorized to make a law on that particular subject on which resolution was passed. Okay, so ideally the parliament has no power to make laws on the state list, but there are few exceptions. These are those exceptions where the parliament has the authority to make a law on a state list. And see, we have already discussed that during national emergency, the parliament can make law on a state list. During president's rule, the parliament can make law on state list for that particular state. Now, this is the third situation where the parliament can make laws on the state list. But remember, the law made by the parliament on the state list based upon the resolution of the Rajya Sabha, that then now this resolution remains in force for 1 year. So the fact is, if the Rajya Sabha has passed a resolution which is allowing the parliament to make a law on state subject, this resolution has a limitation. This resolution remains in force only for 1 year. So if the 1 year is over and the law made by the parliament is not going to end, if the resolution is over, I mean the one year of that resolution is complete, then the law made by the parliament will survive for maximum 6 months from the date of expiration of such resolution. So if the resolution is for 1 year, then the law made by the parliament will be for 1.5 years. Why? Resolution ends after 1 year, then the law made by the parliament will not end immediately. That once the resolution is end, the law also comes to the end. No. The law will continue for more than 6 months. The law will continue for extra 6 months. And only after 6 months, the law will cease to be in operation. So it means the resolution passed by the parliament, the resolution passed by the Rajya Sabha remains valid only for 1 year, and the law made by the parliament remains valid or remains to continue in force only for 1.5 years. So we can write this point that under Article 249, if Rajya Sabha passes a resolution in the national interest by two-third majority of members present and voting in the house on a state subject, then parliament becomes empowered